Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with storied jazz pianist and vocalist James Judson. We get into his new 2026 album, Songs of My Dreams, coming out of a retirement, and so much more. He began performing at the age of 5, and the very next year he won his first singing contest. As a teen growing up in Boulder, Colorado, he started playing local venues, weddings, and state fairs, dabbling in songwriting. It seemed music would most likely be his career, but in his mid-30s, he reached a crossroads. He had decided to put music aside and focus on raising a family and starting a construction business. He locked his music and budding talent away for the next 30 years, and now he is back with Songs of My Dreams. It was co-produced alongside Grammy-winning producer Tim Sonnefeld, and it's quite a story. We get into it all. Enjoy this interview.
All right, Joe.
All right, man. James, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So before we get into your wonderful latest album, Songs of My Dreams, I want to begin with the way that I always begin my interviews. And it's, 6 years ago, this pandemic was rearranging our world, changing our lives, especially for musicians. How did you make it through that era? And how has it changed the way that you approach music and life today?
Well, to be honest with you, the pandemic was probably fortuitous timing for me. At the outset of the pandemic, to be honest with you, it's a strange story. I was actually at Fame Recording Studio cutting a country album, and word of this virus started to happen. And by the time I left Fame Studio and landed back into Los Angeles, Fame is located in Muscle Shoals. It's a really well-known R&B studio, especially in the 60s and 70s. Aretha Franklin resurrected her career there, and so many others. And a lot of the music we hear that we think came out of Motown, a bunch of it came out of Muscle Shoals. But anyway, I'm at Fame Studio, and the pandemic kind of started to get real serious, and by the time I got back to Los Angeles, the next day or second day, the town shut down. So it was right in the period from, oh, are we going to take it serious, to, oh, we got to shut everything down. And I was at Fame Studio. So I'll always remember the outset of it. It didn't damage me as much as other musicians because I had just got back into music about 8 months prior to the pandemic. I had left music for 30 years. When I was a young man, I started singing when I was very young. I remember I sang with Frankie Yankovic, that used to be the Polka King, and I won a couple singing contests. But by the time I was in my late 20s, singing and playing music really caused problems with my first wife. And then my two oldest kids, they didn't like it either because it took time away from them, and ended up getting divorced, and I swore I would never do anything with music again. And then it's a very strange, long story how I got back in, but on April 20th, 2019, I was standing on a deck by myself looking down this valley in Los Angeles, and out of nowhere, in broad daylight, this voice comes into my head like you got headphones on, and all it says is, you're at the right place at the right time of your life. And I didn't know, the quote is exact. It said, you're at exactly the right place at exactly the right time of your life. And I actually thought I was going to die because I'd never had a voice come down. And I think that voice, in a sense, rewired my brain. And I eventually led me to meet an individual that eventually got me back into music. And here I am, 6.5, 7 years later, cutting a jazz album, and we're about ready to start working on a second and fourth album, actually.
So this has to feel like almost like a phoenix rebirth. There has to be such a level of jubilation for this.
Well, it is definitely a phoenix rebirth, but this wasn't my plan. My life plan was not to be back in music. But when I tell you this, I mean this with all sincerity. When this spirit finally got me to pick up a guitar for the first time in a couple decades, I had a nervous breakdown. It was at Guitar Center on a Sunday, actually December 8th, 2019. And the friend that got me back into music was there, and I don't know, I just picked this guitar up, played for about 20 seconds, and then I just had this breakdown. I can't explain why. I can't explain any of it, but I bought the guitar. He made me buy the guitar, and I bought a little vocal amp and a microphone, and I got the equipment back home. My buddy actually hauled it out of the store because I paid and I ran out of the store and told him just to get the stuff and bring it out. So then we drove home and I dropped him off, and I just left all the equipment there for 4 days in the car. Finally lugged it up to my room, my condo, and played for about 5 minutes and just thought to myself, this is the dumbest thing you've ever done. And I kind of put it away for another 2 weeks. And then I had a friend come over, and I played him a couple of my old tunes. He thought they were great, and they talked me into going to a recording studio. I cut a couple tracks. And after that, this spirit, or whatever you want to call it, just pretty much forced me back into music. When I tried to leave, I would get somewhat ill. I don't know how to explain it, but I know now I just have to believe I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, because I've been on the right path and feeling good spiritually about everything I'm doing right now.
So what are you ultimately hoping the listener gets from this new album, this kind of resurgence of your career?
Well, the album is definitely inspired by dreams. Every OG song came from a dream. And I have 2 covers, of course, Shout of Your Smile and All of Me. But the other 11 songs are all originals. And they all came in dreams. I was in the middle of cutting, actually, another Americana album when I sang a song to a producer, Tim Sonnefeld, and my manager, Matt Fortnow, and they said, you ought to cut that. And the next thing you know, the Americana album took a back seat. We just dove headfirst into the jazz. And I am more comfortable with the jazz. I like singing the jazz. It's more natural for me, I really believe. But I don't know, the listener coming away, when they listen to this album, Frank Sinatra actually was one of 2 artists that came in very powerful dreams. And the song on the album called Walking a Sidewalk, it's the 12th song in the album. It's the second to last. In my dream, I'm in my bed and I lean up on my right arm, how you kind of lean up to look at somebody standing over you. And Frank came out of this cloud like we're watching a Steven Spielberg movie, sci-fi movie. He walks over to me looking just atypical 1957 style clothing, early 60s clothing. And he just reached his hand out and in a very serious Frank Sinatra way just said, do this, brother. And he real serious, and he just didn't have anything in his hand. He just reaches out, and I reach up, and the next thing you know, I've got, within 20 minutes by 6 a.m. that morning, I had Walking the Sidewalk done. And the melody.
Wow.
So these songs, that's why the album is called Songs of My Dreams. Tim Sonnefeld was smart enough to say, we just ought to call it Songs of Your Dreams, because it is. And so that's the title. These songs came from the ethereal. My name's on them, but honestly, I don't know where they come from and how it happens.
Everything you've talked about.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, everything you've talked about, it all seems as though this has been your destiny, to move people with your music, to be a musician, to sing. How did this all begin? Take me back to your beginnings.
Well, in the beginning, I was young, and my family was very musically oriented. My immediate family, not so much, but my first cousins and my uncles all played accordion, which sounds funny. And one became very, very accomplished, one of the best accordionists in America, actually, at the day. but he started me running scales vocally so I could sing, and I entered a singing contest. I was about 5.5 years old. They used to be called Stars of Tomorrow, and I won that in Boulder, and then I won another one when I was 14. And ever since, and then I was playing in bands. I was always the lead singer. I used to play drums, and I got tired of sitting behind the drums and behind everybody, so then I picked up a guitar, started playing rhythm guitar so I could stand up and sing, and was in some pretty good, actually a couple of great bands in Boulder, but life went on, and eventually I got out of it. More and more pressure with being an adult, making money, and my wife and 2 kids, my first wife. And I just, after the divorce started, I just quit. And then I did keep plucking on my acoustic guitar, but about 1995 or so, 96, I just packed it all up and swore I would never touch music again. But now the kids are all raised. I got remarried, a very successful marriage, 27 years and going. My wife now just loves my music. And ironically, my first wife loves it too now. Everybody loves it, even my older kids. They're all behind me 100%. So anyway, it was basically starting when you're 5, while your mid-teen years and your 20s and early 30s playing in local bands, and then finally giving it up until 2019.
So early on in your life, what was one of the first live shows that you saw that blew you away, that moved you and made you feel either jazz or music?
I was always interested in the jazz, vocal jazz. My Aunt Rose, who always lived next to us until I was about 22, my mom and her were very close, her sister. And she constantly had Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Nat King Cole, I'm forgetting, Ray Charles. So I just grew up with that kind of music. And it became, I don't know, something I always loved. As well, as I listened with my friends, of course, we were listening to rock and roll. But every time I went over to my aunt's house, which was quite frequently, we were listening to vocal jazz recordings of primarily the Rat Pack guys, Dean Martin, etc. So that piqued my interest in this kind of music. And even in the rock band, ironically, when I was a kid, we would play Shadow of Your Smiles, because our lead guitar player was classically trained. He had Tommy Boland's old Gibson, very, very good guitarist, and we would, in the middle of a rock gig, we would play The Shadow of Your Smile, and everybody would love it, especially the girls. So that's one of the songs I've sang my entire life, pretty much.
So what do you like the best about being a professional musician? What motivates you and gets you up every day now?
Well, I love the creation of songs. I still have songs coming in dreams, and I love taking those melodies from the dream state to, the earthly state, you should say, from the ethereal to the real, where people birthing a song is really, really exciting to me. It's super exciting. Another thing that really motivates me is now that I'm doing this jazz music, I've got to befriend so many amazingly talented and dedicated jazz musicians, and whenever I'm around them or can play with them, then I feel really inspired to have an opportunity to do that.
The other side of this is being a part of the jazz community. And when you get in this world, it's not a lucrative world that people get into. It's because of the love. But there's a community, and there's a wonderful sense of everybody that's in it. What do you like the best about being a part of the jazz community?
Well, you just said that really eloquently, because that is what it's about, is being part of this tight-knit jazz community. And, hopefully one day I'll be recognized as a positive contributor to jazz and that jazz community, that would be a huge honor to myself. And I would love that. The money aspect of it, to be honest with you, I don't think about that much. I quit music for 30 years, and I built a successful construction company. I have 2 sons and my wife that are still work their butts off in it so that I can pursue this new journey that I'm on. But I'm just thankful to be able to create the jazz music. And my goal, if you ask me, would be to bring jazz music back to more of a forefront genre instead of taking a backseat to country or rock or pop or rap or any of the other genres. I think vocal jazz is beautiful, beautiful music.
I agree. That's exactly why I do this show. So let me ask you this, James. At the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone that you play music with, that you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Well, actually, I've really, really, really battled with self-perception, believing that I'm not good enough to do this, but it seems like I fool myself constantly, and I'm glad to tell you that I'm starting to actually believe in myself again, my voice and my songwriting ability, and I think there is a place for James Judson in the jazz world.
So if anybody would like to pick up a copy of Songs of My Dreams that would benefit you the most, download it, or catch you live, any of the good business, where's the best place to go?
You can go to jamesjudson.com, my website, jamesjudson.com, and then we sell CDs and albums on that site.
Beautiful. James, this has been wonderful. What a great story. It's so great to have you back in this world. Hopefully people start putting the jazz back on the forefront. I'm going to shout this from the mountaintops. So,
well,
thank you, man.
Joe, this is something important. This album is based on when Tim Sonnefeld and myself started talking about this. We decided we were going to shoot for Count Basie Orchestra, somewhat of a Quincy Jones arrangement. So it's Frank Quincy and Count Basie. And a lot of people that hear the album, they'll go, oh, that sounds like Frank Sinatra. Well, that was somewhat by an intention. And, even young kids today still talk about Frank Sinatra. We have 6 of our own kids, and we even adopted a girl from Morocco, and they all love Frank Sinatra. So we want to bring the power of that back to the jazz world with a little bit of a swing, a little bit of a macho attitude, and melodies that people want to remember and hear again and again.
I love it. I can't wait to profile you on the show and the album. So, again, James, thank you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out. Best of luck with everything. It's a wonderful story.
Well, Joe, you're a great interviewer, I'll tell you that. You got a great voice.
It was so good to meet you, man. Thank you so much.
Same, Joe, man. You were awesome.
Thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in L.A., New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to James for his time and story. If you want to hear more Neon Jazz interviews, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
All of me, take all of me. All of me, you took all of me.
Neon Jazz.